want to take you live now to mayoral candidate Josh Matlow making a community safety campaign announcement. We'll listen in live.
I've been waiting for somebody to tell my wife Melissa that for so long. Thank you, Lori, so much. Lori inspires me, and I can tell you that I believe that our city is the vehicle, but our communities are the driver when it comes to fulfilling their ambitions and their dreams. Here in Oakwood Vaughan and over in Little Jamaica, Lori is one of the leaders. Let's hear it for Lori. You know, for far too long, under the last two administrations, we've seen our services decline. Whether it be snow clearing, whether it be meaningful investment into social services, whether it be trying to get our kids into a rec program. It feels sometimes like you're playing Olympic Games as you're clicking on that button. When it comes to safety and reliability on the TTC, when it comes to even getting the roads paved, we can do a lot better. And I believe that a better Toronto is possible. I want a Toronto that is safe. I want a city that is affordable. I want a city that works. I hear from too many young people who cannot afford to pay the rent, too many older adults who can't afford to pay their mortgage, and too many people who don't even have a home at all. We need to focus on them to make the city work for all of us. And there are too many people I hear from every day who won't even take the TTC anymore. They don't feel safe. They see people who need a home, who are unwell, who need our support, and there's been too many violent incidents on the TTC and in our neighborhoods. And I believe that we can do a lot better. These tragedies that we've experienced on the TTC are preventable. And the first thing we need to understand is that while these tragedies have been occurring on the TTC, the root causes of violence doesn't come from the TTC. These are complex issues, but if we focus on real solutions, we can get results. When people are grappling with poverty, with trauma, with racism, with addiction, with economic disadvantage, they need the supports proactively to prevent violence from occurring in the first place. And I'll tell you, when I've spoken with moms, with other people who have lost their loved ones, their kids, without exception, they tell me that they would far rather see violence be prevented in the first place than simply react to it afterward. So the TTC will be safe when our communities are safe. And I believe for far too long, we've been putting too much responsibility on the police to do what trained experts, professionals can be doing to be better positioned to get results, to prevent violence from happening in the first place, to address mental health, trauma, to identify individuals who have the potential of violence and de-escalate a situation before it becomes a tragedy in the first place. We have a shelter system that has been described as safe indoor spaces, but the very people who rely on them don't describe them that way. We need more and better and safer beds and spaces so that people don't have to go into the TTC for shelter in the first place. So, I'm announcing today that we are no longer going to be asking the police to do everything. The police should be doing what they're best at. But we need to begin investing in trained professionals to do what they're best positioned to do. So, at a time when we are facing not only violence on the TTC and in our neighborhoods, we are also facing an unprecedented budget pressure at the City of Toronto. Any candidate, anyone who's running to be your mayor, cannot earn your trust if they announce plans that aren't funded. So I'm announcing, as your mayor, we're going to create the Community Health and Safety Fund. And we're going to finance that by stabilizing the annual police budget. That budget is $1.16 billion. By stabilizing that budget over the next 3 years, we will free up $115 million to invest in preventing violence and crime in the first place. We're going to be transferring the responsibilities of the police when it comes to responding and preventing violent crime in our TTC and our neighborhoods to trained professionals who know how to do it, who have the expertise and knowledge to do it. And I can tell you, I talk to frontline officers who tell me the very same thing. These officers tell me that they're not public health nurses. They're not youth workers. They should be doing what they should be doing, and the experts and professionals who can prevent violence should be doing what they're doing, but the money needs to follow the service. And again, with unprecedented budget pressures, with a $1.5 billion shortfall in this budget, we have to make decisions, we have to make choices, and we need to start investing in the services that have been underfunded for many years. And I'm going to work with the Auditor General to support the Toronto Police Services Board to do what every other service in the City of Toronto has been asked to do, whether it be childcare services, recreation and more, parks. It's time for the police budget to be stabilized so that we can invest in preventing violence in the first place. It's time to do things differently. It's time to do things differently because what we know, and this is inarguable, no matter the polarizing debates and the hyperbole that we hear from some, the approach that the city has been taking for far too long is not working. We're still losing our kids. We're hearing more and more people who won't even use the TTC in the first place. And if the approach that the city was taking was working, we wouldn't be having this conversation today. As your mayor, we're going to take an approach that is evidence-based, honest, fully funded, and will deliver results. Thank you. And for those of you reporters at the back, I'm very happy to take any questions you might have.
Well, good morning. Hi, Josh. Andrew from CTV.
Good to see you.
I know this may not be as, let's, for lack of a better word, let's call it sexy, as some of the, let's say, endorsements you've gotten so far. But looking at the announcement and the release that we got,
yes.
Can you tell a bit of the nitty-gritty of why it's better to go, in your mind, at the root of the problem, looking at the studies, looking at whether it's from NYU, the other things that you've put in your release, why, when someone on face value will think, oh, you want to cut from the police budget to make the city safer. That sounds oxymoronic on face value, but you say you have evidence to support why. And can you tell a little bit about why?
Absolutely. You know, the city's own pilot, where we have interventions teams who are trained professionals, mental health crisis responders, people who are trained and knowledgeable in that field, unlike many of our frontline police officers, as well as they are. Through that pilot, we've already had about 1,500 calls, and 78% of them didn't involve any police at all. In other words, the evidence is showing us, even from our own pilot, that we are more successful when we have trained professionals who can help de-escalate a situation rather than see the tragedies that we've seen far too often, and sometimes even involving police, if we're to be honest with ourselves. Over a decade ago, the province commissioned a report called the Roots of Youth Violence Report by Alvin Curling and Roy McMurtry. And so sadly, so many of those recommendations, if they had been invested in over a decade ago, there is good reason to believe that we would be in a better situation today than we are. And what I want to do as mayor, what I'm determined to do as mayor, is finally make those investments so that our kids can be safer and grow up in a safer city. Even Toronto's example, for several years, we saw even a decline in the police force that we had, the number of officers we had, but we also saw a decline in violent crime. So in other words, there's no causal relationship even between the number of officers we have and the amount of crime that we experience. What I want to see done is have a police force that does what it's good at, but I also want to make sure that we have evidence-based programs that are fully funded and able to actually prevent crime before it begins in the first place. What we haven't done well enough is invest in the proactive, preventative side, but the police budget has continued to balloon year after year, including last year. So, this isn't really a contest between the two. This is really about making up for lost time, and I intend to make meaningful investments in doing so.
There always needs to be room for applause break after questions.
Thank you.
You said fully funded. As a follow-up, all of the candidates that have had either announcements thus far or put out 5-point plans, 4-point plans, however many points they want to put on a plan. Yeah. For the voters that are looking to be potentially figuring out their vote, are you trying to differentiate yourself not only on policy but also saying it's fully funded? Because $1.3 billion for security doors on a TTC is one thing. It sounds good, but for what you're planning to do, everything you say thus far is going to be funded, no problem.
I'm not trying to do anything. I'm just doing it. There have just been, far too many years, dating back to Smart Track announcements in 2014 and all these announcements that sound good for elections, but they really are. They're campaign ploys. They're meant to convince people that there's some amazing plan, but I don't believe that one can earn the public's trust without being able to demonstrate how you're going to fund it and actually see it through to fruition. So whether it be the City Works Fund that I announced when I first launched, to begin improving services in our city, and today demonstrating that the way to prevent crime is to use the existing budget we have, but in a more balanced way, to stabilize where budgets have ballooned and start investing in areas that have been underfunded for too many years. And here's the reality. The city has a $1.5 billion shortfall. The other levels of government, you may have read about this, they did not come to the city's rescue. They did not bail out the budget. So the reality is the city is facing a number of crises, but certainly a big financial crisis. And it's facing a $46 billion budget pressure over the next 10 years. This is not the time for any candidate to just kind of come out with some plan and make up that they're going to pay for it without actually demonstrating to the public that they have a realistic way to do it. So listen, I know that when I talk about a dedicated property tax toward improving services, that's going to get people talking. I get that. When I talk about stabilizing the police budget, there will be some people like Doug Ford who may have a disagreement with me. I say respectfully. But I think it's important to be upfront and honest, not only about what our vision is for the city, but how we're going to pay for it, so that when I'm elected, if Torontonians decide to choose me.
When?
Thank you. That's up to, listen, that's up to Toronto. That's up to Toronto. But I'm willing to put my trust in Torontonians that they want an honest conversation about how to get results, whether it be everything from fixing our roads to improving services, to clearing our snow, to helping the unhoused get homes, to helping everyone in our middle class actually be able to afford a home, to support people who can't make the rent, to make sure that violence is prevented rather than simply experienced on our TTC and our neighborhoods. And I believe Torontonians want that, and I believe that they expect.
All right, we've been listening in to mayoral candidate Josh Matlow providing a community safety announcement, much to the delight of his supporters who are cheering him on, saying that if he's elected mayor, he would establish a community health and safety fund. And in order to pay for that, he would stabilize the police budget for at least 3 years. He says that you shouldn't really trust any mayoral candidate who cannot say how they're going to fund any of their proposals going forward. He would invest that money, take away the responsibility from police in establishing safety on the TDC, and invest in trained professionals.